Hello class, this is Professor Rennick, and this is a pre-recorded session of the Unit 2 discussion in the Unit 2 seminar. As we talked about last class, I won't be there for this Thursday's lecture, so I'm pre-recording the seminar so everybody can review it before, either on the date on Thursday at your normal time or sometime before that. This will be on the announcements board. I will send you an email for it, and everybody's going to get credit for attending the Unit 2 lecture on Thursday, so don't worry about that. In addition, I've created a discussion board, a separate discussion board on Unit 2 to ask questions you may have from this particular pre-recorded seminar. In the event that there's something that comes up that you're not sure about, put the question on that discussion board and I'll make sure that it's there, and you can review it and you can get your questions answered. So let's get started on some initial thoughts. Discussion board 1, which you're still in, and hopefully by the time you read this you'll be finished with, was an opinion discussion board. But please, in the upcoming discussion boards, there will be no opinions. I don't want your opinions on the discussion boards from this point on, unless it's specifically stated on the discussion board. Anything you say needs to be supported by some factual support, whether it be research or something else to support your opinion. Please review my announcements how to properly cite under the APA, because I will be looking at the citations that go to your actual details of your discussion board and the depth and breadth of your discussion board. Be thoughtful on the discussion board. Interact with your classmates. Of course, practice the appropriate etiquette. What I mean by that is, make sure that you're kind to your classmates, that you are talking to them in a kind tone and not a critical tone. If there's any critical things that need to be said, I as the professor and the discussion board leader will say them. It's not for anybody else to say or make comments on grammar or spelling or anything of that sort. So make sure you practice the appropriate etiquette. I haven't seen any examples on the Unit 1 discussion board that would give rise to it, but I always make sure to remind everybody regarding that. In Unit 2, you need to read Chapter 2, the Introduction to the American Legal System. Review in 2 websites in the structure of the federal court system and your state court system. Participate on the discussion board, and take the Unit 2 exam and practice Unit 2 vocabulary. So make sure when you're going through what you need to do in Unit 2 that you go through this checklist and you do everything. Don't forget about the exam. Don't forget about the vocabulary. Make sure they're done before the end of the unit. Now, as I promised you, I'm going to give you a little preview of the Unit 3 written assignment. I'm going to be I'll be sending you an email as well as a video on how to get a good grade on your Unit 3 paper. Now, this is a research paper, so there will be research involved in the paper and answering the questions. I'll also be providing some websites that you can obtain some of this information, and if you can't find some on your own. So I will be helping you provide some of that research as well. Make sure that you review the video on class announcements and the video sent to you by email on how to do well on a Unit 3 written assignment. That is very, very important. It's important for the research, important to answer the questions in the assignment. And also, citations are essential in this particular paper, and the citation correctly under the APA guidelines. You are graded, and part of the rubric will be based upon that. Please review and ask any questions about the paper you may have ahead of time, so you're not asking me at the last minute. Each of you will be getting a recording back from me, going over your paper with my comments on your paper. So rest assured, you get plenty of feedback from me, and you're going to get plenty of information about where you did well and where you need to improve on your paper. Some of the tips with the written assignment is, since it's a research paper and not an opinion paper, you can't put your opinion in the paper. Please, the most points that are taken off on this Unit 3 assignment is when somebody puts their opinion in the paper, or it's not supported by facts, or I can't tell whether it's an opinion or fact, or it's written from something that you didn't cite. Don't do that. Cite your sources. If you take something or an idea from a source, you have to cite it, or you'll be taken off on it. Proper citation, as I said, is crucial. Wikipedia is not a citation source. It's a good place to start, and get some ideas where to go. Look at the footnotes in Wikipedia, but it is not a source for your citations. So please do not cite Wikipedia. You will be marked down substantially on it. Google is also not a citation source. Google is a search engine. So don't cite Google as a source of a particular site. It's actually something you found in Google. If you need help with citations, you can check in the Writing Center, or I give you 3 different websites, so 4 different websites to help you with it, including a citation machine.net, which will create the citation for you if you put in the right information. And finally, all submissions must be in Microsoft Word. If you don't submit it in Word, I'm not accepting it. I'll repeat that. You don't submit it in Microsoft Word, I do not accept it. Do not give it to me in WordPerfect. Do not give it to me in some other type of word processing format. I will not accept it. Please, it must be submitted in Microsoft Word. The submissions themselves have to be entered into the Classroom Dropbox. Under Unit 3 written assignment, there's a Dropbox. You have to put the paper in the Dropbox. Do not email me the paper. I will send it back to you and tell you I'm not accepting it. I will not accept anything via email. If you're having trouble putting it in the Dropbox, you can contact technical support and they will help you make sure it's in the Dropbox. But do not email me the paper. It will not be accepted. Grammar and spelling are important. You're graded on it. You get under the rubric. Make sure you use spell check as well as proofreading the paper. Now remember, spell check doesn't catch everything that might be misspelled. There's different spelling of words, so you have to proofread them as well. Any late submission will be subject to a grade reduction. If you submit your assignment after 11:59 on Tuesday at the end of Unit 3, it is late. 12:01 is late, 12:02 is late, it's late. Don't wait till last minute to submit it. It's automatically a 5% per week reduction. If you submit that in Unit 4, it's a 5%. If you submit the paper in Unit 5, it's 10%. Submit the paper in Unit 6, it's 15%. It goes up. And if you submit in Unit 7, it's 20%. After Unit 7, you can't submit it. So don't be late on a paper. It only hurts your grade. It only hurts what could be easily get a BA paper that gets reduced to a lower grade. Finally, make sure it's your original work. I check every single paper for plagiarism. I use Turnitin.com. I make sure that what you are citing something that you use from someplace else. If you use something and quote something from someplace else, you must cite it. If not, it's plagiarism. You will get marked off substantially for it if it's not your work. And if a paper that is has too much copy work is subject to review by the dean of the school. So please, it's not worth it. There's ways to be able to create your own original work. So now that we have that out of the way, if you have any, by the way, if you have any questions regarding the Unit 3 written assignment, don't hesitate to contact me, email me, call me. I'll be happy to help you out any way I can on the Unit 3 written assignment. I'm just giving you a heads up now. Remember, it's not due to the end of Unit 3, but I want you thinking about it a little bit in Unit 2. And I'll be sending you a number of different things in Unit 2 to help you with that. Today we're going to talk about our system of law and federalism in our Constitution. And a very basic definition of federalism is the distribution of government power and responsibility between a national central government and the states. Now, one of the misconceptions about federalism is the fact that people think all the power is given to the federal government. This is not true. In fact, federal government has less power in many ways than the state government, because the only power that is given to the federal government are those specifically enumerated in the Constitution. Now, there are exceptions to that. The federal government can have powers that are not specifically enumerated under the 14th Amendment and the necessary and proper clause. But we're not going to get into those specifics in this course. If you take constitutional law course, you will get into that part of the Constitution. But we have a limited federal government, and each state has the power to regulate without interference with the federal government what lies within its borders. Of course, anything that the state government do cannot be violative of the federal government or the Constitution or federal government or federal law. A good example of this is if the federal law and Civil Rights Act of 1964 that prohibited segregation. You can't have, state can't, even though it's within the state, they can't decide we're going to have segregation in the state because there's a federal law that supersedes that power, and that federal law will supersede any state law that conflicts with it. So even though it's a limited federal power and the states have the right to regulate it, the state law cannot conflict with a federal law that gives us certain rights. That's one of the things you see right now with so much about the you go through each state about voting act type of legislation that's going through requiring specific identification to vote or certain things you have to do to vote. Those are some of the things that might be violative of the federal law that's being challenged right now. So you're going to see that in the news in the upcoming months about whether the state has the right to restrict or have certain requirements to vote, because voting is governed state by state, and the state can make laws to vote, but they can't violate someone's civil rights to vote. So if you violate civil rights and you violate a right you have under the Constitution, then that state can't, that particular law is not going to hold up. But for our purposes for federalism, just understand that federalism is where the powers that they have specifically enumerated powers in the federal government, and the rest of the powers, and specifically we're talking the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, are vested in the state.